Hey guys, this is John, and welcome to another Climbing the Rating Ladder video. This is borderline climbing the rating ladder. In fact, I think it's almost certainly in the standard category, but I was planning on recording a climbing the rating ladder. I'm going to try to treat it just like a standard video, though, and I'm going to play the Scandinavian against this National Master rated 2445. Okay, knight c3, you sometimes see this, and this is the reply I'm likely going to be recommending in my course. So after the exchange on e4 coming up and hitting the knight. Okay, d3. I think we're just playing chess now. I don't think this is necessarily a challenging reply by white. d3 anchors the knight in the center, but I think I already have a pretty good position here. I know you guys needed that reminder that we're, in fact, playing chess. All right, knight e2. So I can send my bishop to f5. I can also play knight f6. I think I'm going to go knight f6. I just have to shorten my thought process and my commentary, especially, so I don't get in time pressure. The perennial battle here, right? But yeah, this game should be fun to include because even at this rating level, we can maybe pick up on some tendencies. Okay, so the capture on f6 happens. Two options here, g takes or e takes. I think I'm going to go with g takes. So I'm voluntarily accepting doubled pawns. However, I think there's some potential with those pawns to do some stuff on the g-file or in the center. Attacks my queen. I could play check. That's kind of interesting. Queen d8 looks decent as well. Queen d6. Queen d6, knight e4, though. So I'm kind of deciding between these two. Queen a5, somewhat of an option as well if I want to play it like a more typical queen a5 Scandi. Yeah, I think this might be an interesting line of play, and then bishop h6, but then there's d4 is the only thing. d4 is annoying. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give the check, and on bishop e3, I might play knight d4. That could be the play. And I'm thinking that's awkward for white on the e-file. If white plays bishop e2 here, I'm thinking of knight d4 as well, going after the light square bishop. Yeah, so let me double check this move. I like it. I don't see a way white can easily push me away here. f4 runs into queen takes e3. This knight doesn't have too many menacing options. Notice my queen is 2 squares away diagonally from that knight. I do recall some lines that I've analyzed where this is a theme. All right, queen to d2. So it could play bishop g4. Try to induce f3 because then I can take it. I wonder if this idea is worthwhile. Pretty unusual, but that effectively freezes white. There's f4 again, though. f4 could be coming here, huh? f4, I have queen takes e3, though. Yeah, I'm going to go for this. This looks really intriguing. And in these fast games, no increment here. This is 10-0, no increment. If I can get my opponent to think for a minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes plus, that's phenomenal. So I'm looking to plant this bishop here, as weird as it seems, because then I get the fork if white takes, and white's king. I'm trying to restrict white's king, prevent them from castling. There's a very similar idea in a line of the Scotch Gambit, where white executes this idea, plays a bishop to f6 that can't be captured. Off the top of my head, maybe knight e4 is worth considering here, just to try to give the bishop some options, maybe f4. I could think about playing f5 in response to that. I've also freed up for castling queenside. So I like the plethora of options I have here. And white is having to burn time. I think I probably would play this if I were white. I don't see too many better options. Well, I could play bishop e2, but that feels like a concession. I can take, gain the bishop pair, maybe grab on b2 if I'm feeling bold. Let's see what they do. This is caffeinated, by the way. This is not decaf this time. Coffee. It's a little late, but I wanted to get amped up for this video, especially when I clicked on a 2445. All right, yeah, and white's spending some time here. I love to see this. It's exactly the effect I was hoping this move produces. I think white sees what I'm up to, because if they hadn't spotted bishop f3 by now, I think they almost certainly would have played h3, because it's such an obvious move. Knight e2. Okay, so similar idea as bishop e2. Scanning for tactics almost looks like I might have something tactically here, but I think we're just looking at a swap down, and I think white's giving me a pawn. I think they're sacrificing a pawn here on b2. So it's up to me if I want to take it or not. I could also consider something like a bishop, or a knight rather, to f5, hit the bishop, hit the pawn. I think likely they castle there. But then I can take e3 and bishop h6. Yeah, this is awfully tempting, whether I trade on e2 or not, but I do feel like white gets mobilized pretty quickly. They might take with the king on e2 if I trade there twice first. Knight f5 does strike me as an interesting option. d4, though, complicated. Okay, I'm going to look at this one more time. Also, there's the bishop takes e2 option. But that doesn't change much. Yeah, they're going to have some compensation if I go for the pawn. So I'm going to go for this one. Let's play knight f5 and see how white reacts, because it does unveil these two threats. Again, I think d4 is probably likely here. I'm thinking queen e6 or queen d6. I haven't totally made up my mind. Because the shorter the time control, the more momentum and having the initiative matters. So that's why I'm not too optimistic about taking the pawn. In a classical game, I might look at that line, going and taking b2 after the trade. Yep, white does play d4. So here, maybe here. We're on move 11 in a Scandi, and I'm still thinking about where to put the queen. Classic. Comes with the territory, right? I'm going to go here. I'm going to try to bait this pawn forward one more time. If white were to castle now, they would lose a2, and that would not be good. So I'm trying to bait this pawn forward, looking for queen e5 at that point. I want to reestablish the attack on b2 and still have this option as well. Okay, knight f4, and now I was thinking just go here. And notice that white has reestablished this situation by moving the knight where they can't castle. They legally cannot castle here. They'd be going through check. Had to make sure my bishop's okay, so if white plays f3 or h3, I must insert knight takes e3. But I was kind of looking to hunt down that dark square bishop anyways, so I'm okay with that. If white checks here, I'll just play c6. I feel pretty good about this position. Bishop c4 played. Yeah, so to take e3, probably simplest. Could play e6 maybe, if I think that that's a part of my plan. Bishop h6 even. Another position with a lot of options. I think white's going to castle short now. I just get that vibe. If I castle long, bishop takes here. I don't particularly like that. e5 options too. Queen c6 even in some cases. I'm going to play e6, I think. I would expect castling short. And maybe I can hold off on taking this bishop. I'm kind of holding that bishop hostage, right? It doesn't have a retreat square. I know white may look to attack my bishop, but then I'm willing to take and move it back. Yeah, and white's going to force this situation, it seems. Yeah, let's take. Let's not waste time. Come here. Now, this could be a bit of a weakness. I wonder if white's now going to go long. I foresee bishop h6 being a nice post for my bishop. White does go long. Bishop h6, knight h5, perhaps. Let's castle first. Just get our king to safety. So we've got the two bishops. This pawn's backward. I can maybe plant this bishop here, which I think I'm going to do now. Yeah, let's go. Rook comes over. Do I play f5 perhaps now? Pawn f5. Feels like they might go bishop d3 at some point. So I should think about that option. This knight could be coming here. It very well could be coming to that square. Yeah, let's play f5. Under 5 minutes each here. I think I'd probably play this now for white. I don't think white necessarily wants to take, because that pawn is a bit oppressive to me on g4. So if bishop d3 is played, it's a question, what do I do with the bishop? Leave it or trade? White does play that. Bishop h6 definitely crosses my mind. I also might want to trade, take g4, and then bishop h6. Just get rid of that whole scenario. I know white can establish that knight in. Don't know if I want my pawn on e4, though, at the end, is the thing. Then again, I take one piece off of that diagonal if I don't play bishop h6 right away. Bishop h6, take, take. Then the knight there. Yeah, I think I'm going to capture. Let's take again. And let's play the bishop h6 move. I don't know. It feels like white is stabilized now. Maybe the situation is a little more balanced. I think it's going to come down to which piece is better, the bishop or the knight. Also, these pawns. So this is the area of interest, the pieces and pawns of interest. Who's the king? Okay. Bishop g5 maybe. I think let's establish the bishop here. But then there's knight h3. Careful. Queen e7. Queen e7, queen e4. I could trade on f4. I'm not sure I love that, though. I think I might do this. Knight h3, queen e7. Take f7. I take g4. I do give up some control, though, if I play that way. Yeah, let's go queen e7. I think I need to protect this pawn, and I don't want to assign a rook there yet. If I play this rook, I lose this. Now I just have to speed up under 3 minutes. This is tough psychologically because I feel like I left some chances on the table there in the past, I don't know, 7, 8 moves. The position still seems fine, though, so I'm not going to panic. Let's go here. Also defends this, kind of handy. I can play h6, get this off an attack square. I mean, this position strikes me as equal, but with the time situation, I definitely don't feel like I'd be better here. Okay, knight c5. I must watch out for. Should I play c6? Yeah, let's go c6. This move seems kind of inevitable. I'm going to go for it. Could tempt them to take there. Okay, now should I get rid of this pawn? This feels useful. I'm going to do it. Wouldn't be surprised to see them park the knight on c5 soon, just to be annoying. But I might have some counterplay against the e3 pawn. That pawn remains a possible target. So yeah, just trying to trade a weak pawn for a pawn that's kind of cramping me, the g4 pawn. Also isolated for white, but my h pawn I think is clearly worse than their g pawn, so I don't mind trading it. Okay, so I have the option of h4, but then takes on e6. Could also take on g4. If I take on g4, what happens? Knight g6? Yeah, knight g6 is a threat. So I might have to take here. I think I have to take this knight. Process of elimination, right? I think they have to take with the queen. Rook takes, I take. And if rook takes g4, there's f5 at the end. So queen takes, yep. Now. Okay, let's take here. See if they take on g4 or f6. Take there, okay. Probably f5. Now it's 5 pawns each. I have 2 islands. White has 1, technically. But that doesn't seem like it's going to matter much. And if I can keep this pawn backward, we both have a backward pawn, but I don't know, I see some routes in for my rook now. Some potential pressure. I think this remains like kind of equal. Let's bring the rook in. Just obviously the time. The time is a huge factor here. Wants to trade. Okay, let's double. Who's going to blink here? Time's even now. Okay. I'm going to try to wrest control of the file away from them. Could go to the queen ending, but let's keep a pair of rooks on board. Yeah, rook g1's kind of annoying. Just saw that move. All right, let's come back here. Try to guard this square. Yep, e4, maybe f4? f4 or take. I think I'm just going to take and centralize. I'm not going to get too cute with this with limited time. Ooh, plays that. I didn't see that move. Okay, but I have a check. Let's check here. Check. Now I'm going to have to defend a pawn down ending, though. Let's just go here. Should be a draw, but time and technique. Okay, they offer a draw. That was kind of them because I was down 10 seconds. They didn't have to do that. I would not have faulted them at all for playing. This is a drawn position. But yeah, very sporting of my opponent to offer a draw there with no increment. Yeah, interesting one. So I know the 10-minute can really put a strain on the last half of the game, and we've seen a lot of time scrambles. I will play more increment rapid in the future, as I have in the past with the standard and stuff. Sometimes I'm just a little pressed for time in real life, not on the chessboard. So yeah, I definitely feel like the opening went pretty well for me. I feel maybe I got too cute somewhere around here. Again, knight takes e2, and then queen takes b2 was definitely a consideration. So swap here, insert this first, because if I play bishop takes e2 first, king takes. And I'm sure this is fine for me. Maybe I just castle or something and claim that white has issues with their king a bit. But if I take, maybe this is even playable too. I was thinking a rook would come here and take b7, but that also has some implications like take. I don't know, though. I didn't like an option such as this. Maybe there's some possibilities here, but it looks scary with all my pieces stuck on the back rank other than the queen. And just that momentum is so crucial in these games that I didn't want to relinquish that. So yeah, I was happy with the outcome of the opening in this one, playing my favorite opening, the Scandinavian. I've got a course coming out on it in a couple months probably. I'll surely keep you guys in the loop on that, but I've really been enjoying playing it. I actually haven't run into any theoretical problems in the Scandinavian recently. So I'll be curious what the engine has to say about this. I thought this knight d4 idea was pretty cool, and bishop g4. Knight e2 might be a good reply. It took white 2 minutes, but they did work their way out of the issues here. Maybe I misjudged this position. Definitely possible. With white castling queenside, I do have a somewhat damaged pawn structure with the doubled f pawns. I thought the bishops would be nice. I thought the bishop coming here would be useful, but it did prove that white had sufficient defense of e3. That was never that big of a consideration. And I did have to watch the pressure on the f file. So I kind of think if I had chances in this one, it's probably somewhere in this range, like from the time I played queen e5, knight d4, let's call it move 8, up through, yeah, maybe around here, move 13, that 8 to 13 move range. Let's take a look. Kind of a short analysis here, guys. Shout out to Analysis Gang. Wow, 94.8 for my opponent, 94.5 for me. Let's go medium-sized John here for a second while we take a look at the analysis. Yeah, so Scandi, knight c3, you can expect to encounter that a lot online. I haven't faced it much over the board against strong players, but it's a frequent guest in online play, along with e5, by the way. A lot of amateur players play e5. I know this player is a title player, very strong. But just to give you an overview of what you can expect, e takes d5 is overwhelmingly played at all levels, but you will see a fair amount of e5, sometimes knight f3 if white is pre-moving, and of course you should take the pawn there. Sometimes stuff like d3, queen f3, bishop d3. All those lines are a bit lame, but possible. But yeah, I'd say of the move 2 alternatives that white has, e5 and knight c3 are the most serious, aside from the main line, e takes d5. So yeah, knight c3. The engine likes d4 here. I thought about recommending that in my course, but it leads to more closed positions. The engine likes the space that black has. That's a good option. But ultimately, I think I'm going to go with what I did in the game, even though it's given a dubious mark. There's other moves here too, knight f6, knight c6. So both these knight moves, e5 you see played sometimes. But the nice thing about the move order in the game is it gives white a chance to play knight c3, after which we could play queen a5. And we're back into a queen a5 Scandi by transposition. Or if you play queen d6, you can go queen d6. If you play the queen d8 Scandi, you can play queen d8. I've always wondered in this position if white plays knight e4, if black should repeat or not, but that's up to you. So yeah, d3, I mean, I don't think I've had this position against a strong player. Again, I don't think this can be considered challenging. White's blocking in their light square bishop. Engine already showing equal here. Knight f6 is perhaps not necessarily the best move. I could try to be more ambitious with e5, f5. Like play e5, yeah, move my queen back somewhere and maybe try to get this in, or knight f6 when I'm not damaging my pawns. But I don't mind this structure, taking on the doubled pawns if white captures, which white did. Okay, it wants me to take with the e-pawn here. This is a similar situation as in the Caro-Kann with the early knight f6 line in the main line Caro-Kann. Do you take with the e-pawn or the g-pawn? Looks like they're pretty close in value. E takes f6, somewhat preferred by the engine, showing, yeah, equality, maybe a tiny edge for white. I thought this was, yeah, more along those Caro-Kann lines where I do have good development for my pieces. The bishops should come out pretty quickly. I can conceivably castle on either wing. But g takes f6 seemed a little more exciting. Keep one of my center pawns. So knight c3. Yeah, I thought about a lot of moves here. Queen c5 I didn't really consider just because of bishop e3. Thought about coming back. It's a little bit passive looking, but seems fine. But okay, queen e5. Give the check. Bishop e3, knight d4. That's the top move. Yep, queen d2. I thought this was clever. I was, patting myself on the back and verbally congratulating myself too. b6, I saw the engine recommend for a second too. Going for the long diagonal. That's interesting too. Doesn't really hinder castling, but even bishop e6 seems decent. If I want to point this bishop this direction if white goes long. Just another possibility. Yeah, so I'm almost certain white saw my idea because h3 looks so obvious here, right? I was going to go here, and indeed, this seems justified. Since if white takes, we get the fork, just like I was talking about. Again, there's a line in the Scotch, super similar to that. White's kind of stuck with their king. Knight e4, evidently the best move here, because if take, I can't take the pawn because I lose the knight, but I could castle. I'd play this position. This looks pretty active for me. If white castles, they run into knight b3 check, winning the queen. All right, so bishop g4, knight e2. Yeah, and even the engine says this is a close call. Knight f5 or taking on e2. Let's say I play knight takes. What if I grab this pawn? I thought white castles now. Yep, to defend the rook. Okay, that makes me feel better. The fact that this is not in black's favor. If we get this position and the engine's showing equal, how we have to interpret that is that the engine thinks white has full compensation for the pawn, right? Because white is down a pawn here. If white didn't have compensation for the pawn, you'd see more like -1, indicating the pawn advantage. Or maybe a half pawn or 3/4 pawn, something like that. Maybe even more than a pawn or a point. So, yeah, I just didn't like that. If I were to go down this path, I think I would choose bishop takes. Because king takes, this looks kind of nice. I could see how this is like a tad better for black. But even queen takes, I mean, this is pretty similar if I try to grab the pawn. I just don't like that. I don't feel my development is worth that suffering in a fast game in particular. I don't know where I should put the king. Like, it's kind of hard to arrange castling this way. The king's kind of open. If I castle this way, rook b1 is a ready-made attack down this half-open b file. So practically speaking, I feel pretty good there. Yeah, again, just to remind you, f3 doesn't work for white if they want to block the bishop because I can take e3 and then lure white into the fork. Take on e3 next. I'll be up a pawn when all is said and done. A very nice pawn. Okay, so I play knight f5, keep the pressure, attack the bishop, also attack down here. d4 looks good. Again, tough call here. Queen d6, queen e6. Queen b5 crossed my mind for a moment. I don't think I even mentioned that move. It just looked kind of weird, so I didn't pursue it any further. Yeah, so close in value, these moves. I get the sense now, seeing the accuracy and also what the engine is showing so far, this was a pretty well-played game on both sides. So I know it looks weird to induce knight f4, but I really wanted to have the bishop flex and prevent white from castling. But that might be an unnecessary adjustment. Like, this is also equal. Yeah, this is more along the lines of what I was looking to do in the game. And then I've saved the tempo because I haven't had to move the queen again. But I would also have to expect white to maybe castle here. Get some position like this. Yeah, bishop f4, e5. Very interesting. Inconclusive. I think at a glance here, it's hard to tell which one's better. And again, there's other options like queen b5. Queen b6 an option here too. I mean, you get some interesting positions in the Scandi, right? Like if you were to look at this, this doesn't look like a whole lot of other defenses against e4, right? Even the way I'm playing it here is kind of unusual for a Scandi. But you sense that it was a Scandi because black's queen is out. Okay, bishop c4, e5. Yeah, maybe I could consider that. Knight takes e3 and then e5 also up for consideration. Well, I wouldn't want to take with the queen here, I would think, because of bishop h6. So I could force white to do this. Yeah, maybe this e5 move does present some chances. I was just leery to play that with my king in the center, and I wanted to block this bishop, but here we trade queens, take. Yeah, I could see this being a slightly improved version of the game. 2 bishops, not so many problems with my pawn structure. Queen's off the board. So I kind of stand by that assessment. I mentioned moves 8 to 13. I just had this sense that that was the range that I could improve on in this game. Yeah, and now I played e6 to block the bishop. That might be a little too slow if I want to milk something in the position. So now it's showing tiny edge for white, like quarter pawn or something. Of course, we have to take here. That was my plan all along if the bishop got attacked, because I don't have the h5 square. I must make room for it to come back. But we don't have to rush this. That's why I didn't take it on the last move, because the bishop can't go anywhere, right? So sometimes it can be advantageous not to rush that move. So here, bishop f5. Yep, castle. Bishop e4. Bishop h6 or f5. Close in value here. I was already getting somewhat low on the clock here. This was a tough call whether to leave the bishop or initiate the trade. See, queen c6 is up there. That's interesting because if take, I have these ugly pawns. Yeah, I'm happy that I held from here because with the time situation and kind of being statically worse, I know I needed some help from my opponent with that draw offer at the end. They could have tried to flag me or win on the board, but this is kind of tough if you're down on time because statically speaking, I think white is a tiny bit better here. Again, I was highlighting all these. The f7 pawn is probably the weakest pawn on the board. h7 too, kind of weak. And this bishop, best case scenario, I think I trade it for the knight. But I don't want to do it in a way that's a springboard for them to attack f7. So that's why I didn't chop right away. Maybe I even drew that out too long. I don't know. It's saying I should take here and then play h5, which is kind of what I did in the game, but maybe I shouldn't have even let that knight retreat to d3. So now my bishop's hanging out, eyeing up the pawn, but it does feel like white could maybe squeeze me from here. The engine's suggesting some typical engine moves, a4, a3, just kind of generic space gaining or useful moves. Keep the status quo. Let's say a3. What if I go h5? There are tactical issues? Maybe not. Yeah, it's a small advantage for white, but I think it's appreciable due to black having more pawn islands than white. Again, pawn islands are sets of connected pawns if they're on adjacent files. So white has technically one island here because the C and the D pawn, even though they're not currently speaking to each other, they are connected, whereas these pawns are not connected, right? The cluster here with the queenside cluster, or queenside cluster. So knight e5, f6. Felt good about h5 here because it feels like I've stabilized these pawns now. Yeah, take, because white's threatening, I think, a few too many things like this. Yeah, and I thought maybe I was even getting something here, but I think that's an exaggeration. Actually, in hindsight, I wouldn't even play queen h7, because after this, rook g1 is kind of annoying, just having to even consider rook g7. I don't even think it's a threat, because I can go queen h1 at that point. But say white goes king a2 next, then here, this wouldn't come with check if white's king were on a2. Could change the dynamics a little bit. Yeah, I think in hindsight, I should probably just trade everything down and play this queen ending. Because that tiny imperfection or imbalance, let's say, with the structure, the 2 pawn islands versus the 1, that doesn't matter here. As long as I don't like blunder e6 or something. It's not enough of a consideration. You need a little more to work with than just that alone. But yeah, I felt like I was under some microscopic pressure now, but we were both coming up on time pressure. Looks like I just kind of have to defend a pawn down ending here. Queen f5, something similar could happen. And 4 versus 3, that provides more winning chances than 3 versus 2. If you're the stronger side, you actually want more pawns on board in a rook ending like this, That's maybe a topic for a future video. So 4 versus 3, white has some chances, but this endgame should be a draw because the structure's healthy for me. A5, yes, that's the top move. I was just trying to prevent some advances by white, but mostly it's a fight against the clock here and not making some catastrophic blunder. Yeah, game drawn. Again, thanks to my opponent for offering that draw. They definitely didn't have to. Okay, interesting. I kind of went through that endgame real fast, but let me know if you guys have any comments. Again, I do feel the opening went just fine, so good validation for the Scandi here. And I like the way I played it. I think white found some good defensive moves. Knight e2, d4. That was quite creative, like giving me this dilemma if I want to try to go for the b2 pawn. I think that was a good wager by white that I wouldn't go for it, or even if I did go for it, as you saw with the engine, white has good compensation. It's subtle, though. I think somewhere around here, maybe knight takes e3 first and that e5 move, or possibly queen d6, maybe queen b5. Those are moves I could have improved on. But altogether, I think a pretty well-played game by both sides. So thank you to my opponent, NM Electrosaw. Strong player here. Hopefully they see this. And Electrosaw, if you want to give your comments, I would love to see it. And I know the chat, the viewers would love to see it as well. So feel free to drop a comment on YouTube if you happen to see this. I'll send you the video. All right, thanks, guys. As always, let me know if you have any questions or comments, and I'll see you guys in another video.